An air quality disaster in the West. Meanwhile, hurricane warnings in the Gulf. TikTok rejects Microsoft in favor of a different technology suitor. And an unprecedented weekend in pro sports. We will bring you up to date on it all. Here's what you need to know. Good Monday morning. This is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for September 14th. I am Carlo Versano, and I'm here with Baker Machado. I know we told you guys that Jill was going to be back today. I think that must have been my mistake because she's off today, but she will be back tomorrow, I promise.
It's because you've been trying to get rid of me so fast, Carlo, so that's why.
That's not true. It's not true, Baker. It's good to see you. How are you doing? You have a good weekend?
Amazing weekend, Carlo. How about yourself? What'd you do?
Pretty chill. Saw some friends. Saw some new babies. So yeah, it was all good. All good in the hood.
Isn't that so funny when you're in this stage of your life, your weekend, instead of consisting, going out to the bars, going crazy, it's, I saw my friends and I saw some babies this weekend.
Meeting new babies.
Yeah,
every couple of months there's a new baby to meet.
Yes. We're in that stage of our 30s where it's brunches and babies.
Yeah, exactly.
Carlo, let's get to some of the big headlines on this Monday. At least 35 people have died in those wildfires that are ravaging the West Coast, where weather conditions are not forecast to improve, sadly, anytime soon. That massive North Complex fire in California, now only 26% contained. Meanwhile, President Trump on a Western campaign swing. He's going to stop in Sacramento today to be briefed on that damage. The air quality in California, Oregon, and Washington currently worse than anywhere else, Carlo, on planet Earth, if you can actually believe that.
Yeah, I'm going to link in the newsletter this morning to the air quality map, and it's just off the charts how bad it is. It's really, really something. The president will be, as you mentioned, he will be in the fire zone, or at least close to the fire zone today. He's coming face to face with an issue, that he does not hold in high regard, that being climate change. And he has not made many comments regarding the fires. He basically, anytime he's asked about it, he just sort of blames the states, and these are blue states, and we just know that he's not particularly interested at this point in things that don't affect his voting base, right? Especially as we're in the middle of an election season. Meanwhile, Baker, Tropical Storm Sally expected to strengthen into a hurricane today as it moves slowly northwest through the Gulf of Mexico. Sally tracking to make landfall near New Orleans tomorrow morning around this time, maybe a little bit later, either as a Cat 1 or potentially a Cat 2 hurricane. There are hurricane warnings in place from Grand Isle, Louisiana to Biloxi, Mississippi this morning. This is going to be the Gulf Coast's second hurricane landfall in just a month. Remember, we had I can't even remember what was the name of the hurricane.
We had Laura. We had Nana.
Nana.
Nana, like Nana.
Oh,
Nana. Yes, like your hurricane grandma. Everybody's always said.
Exactly. So yeah, they're already in the S's this season, just off the charts.
Yeah, it's really scary, Carlo. When you talk to meteorologists who even forecasted this last year, it seems every year, because of climate change, they're expecting hurricane season to get progressively worse every single year. It's like, and the same thing with the forest fires. Every single year, it's like we hit a new record when it comes to how bad the damage has been. And when you don't think it gets any worse, it ends up getting worse. So, of course, it's incredibly sad, and our hearts are with everybody out on the West Coast. One of our producers for Wake Up with Cheddar, Rebecca, she actually is with her parents right now in Washington, and she was just telling me earlier this morning, Carla, you can't even go outside. The smoke is so terrible in Washington that it makes it beyond unpleasant just to be outside just for a breath of fresh air.
Wow.
All right, meanwhile, on the latest on the pandemic, Carlo, Israel is going to begin a second nationwide lockdown on Friday. This is a new coronavirus outbreak has hit that country pretty hard. The 3-week lockdown is going to extend through the upcoming Jewish holidays and is intended to prevent mass gatherings that could become super spreader events. And we've seen more and more cases now start to pop up in France, in Spain, and other parts of Europe as well, Carlo, giving researchers more indication that potentially that second wave that they had been indicating was coming might be on its way right now.
Yeah, it does not look good in Europe. I do want to mention, though, Canada, which just recorded its first day of 0 COVID deaths since March 15th. And, today is September 14th. We're now about 6 months into the pandemic here in the U.S. This was 6 months ago, about the time that the fit was starting to hit the shan, as they say, right? Cases are now finally starting to come down. Thankfully, here in the U.S., we're now at an average about 35,000 a day. We're trending in the right direction, even if those numbers are still stubbornly high. And, not to mention the president again, but he is sort of doing everything in his power to get those numbers back up, really. He's held a large indoor rally in Nevada last night. That rally violated the state's rule on mass gatherings, which the Nevada governor called, quote, shameful and irresponsible. This was the campaign's first indoor rally since that disastrous Tulsa event back in July, where you remember Herman Cain was in attendance without a mask on a couple weeks before he sadly passed away from the coronavirus.
Yeah, the juxtaposition in all of this, Carlo, on the heels of Bob Woodward's book, where President Trump is quoted on audio tapes saying that he downplayed the virus. It just doesn't make any sense to a lot of people if the president was trying to downplay the virus specifically to keep calm and make sure that everybody felt okay. It just doesn't make a lot of sense that the president would want to have these rallies if he believed, as he says on the tape, that this is a deadly, terrible virus.
Did you see Woodward on 60 Minutes last night?
I didn't get the chance to watch it, Carlo. It's on my DVR. But having said that, I did get an early advance copy of Woodward's book, and I'm about halfway through it from over the weekend. Incredible the amount of detail that Bob Woodward has. Basically, you can tell he's really interviewed almost every single administration official, and he's going back through the Russia investigation and all of this. So it's a fascinating read right now, Carlo.
So he said on 60 last night that he sort of gave a little bit more context to all of the news that came out last week that you were just mentioning. And he said that the president told him in August that he had Trump had sort of come to the conclusion that nothing more could have been done. But that's sort of, that just doesn't really make sense if you go by what he said in February to Woodward, which is that, this thing is going to be really bad. But Woodward says in that 60 Minutes interview, basically straight up, he's like, President Trump is not up for the job.
That's the thesis. He also says at the end of the book as well, Carlo. And let's stick with the election, because guess what? We're now 50 days away from November the 3rd, and a new batch of swing state polls over the weekend suggesting that Joe Biden's lead over President Trump is holding in a lot of those crucial swing states like Minnesota and Wisconsin, even if we're seeing polls showing the national race tightening. And Mike Bloomberg, this was big news over the weekend, pledging to pour $100 million of his own money, not into a national race, but he's doing it into one single state, the state of Florida, that to help Joe Biden win that battleground state where essentially he is deadlocked with President Trump. The polls over the last few weeks or so originally had been showing Joe Biden with a pretty good lead in Florida, but President Trump has tightened those numbers, Carlo, especially now that he's leading now with Florida Cubans and Latinos in Florida as well. $100 million is a lot of money for just one state, but I would be remiss if I told you this is much smaller than a lot of people expected. Mike Bloomberg, who originally planned to spend a lot more money for Joe Biden on his behalf, a lot less money than Michael Bloomberg's actually spending at the end of the day.
I guess, yeah. I mean, people will complain about anything, right? I mean, if I was, somebody was just giving me $100 million to help me win Florida, and I was running for president, I think I would be, I would be happy with that. Democrats were thinking that Bloomberg had, he had promised to, like you said, put in basically dump like a truckload of cash into this race, and then he sort of ghosted them after he, after his campaign sort of failed, and you didn't hear from him for a while. So it looks like he's making good on his word here with Florida. And I mean, there's an argument that this is very smart because remember, if Florida is called for Biden on election night, it's almost certainly game over. It's got to be game over.
It makes Trump's path to 270 incredibly difficult, but I also feel like there's a personal element to this as well because President Trump now claims Florida as his home state. He wants to win that state more than anything. He's actually reserved more of his money, allocated more of his money for television ads in Florida more than any other state like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and others. So on a personal level, it's important for President Trump to win that state, which is why I think it's more of a jab by Mike Bloomberg to basically spend $100 million of his own money, basically 10% of what Bloomberg spent on his own presidential campaign on that one state. So I feel like there's more of a personal vendetta on this by Mike Bloomberg.
No, I didn't think about that, but yeah, there probably is something to that. I mean, Bloomberg has been very sort of caustic in his, he's one of these guys who would come out and be like, Donald Trump isn't really a billionaire. I'm really a billionaire. Right. he's a fraud. Everybody in New York thinks he's a fraud. So yeah, there probably is some of that.
And you can tell
going on.
Trump is upset by this based off of his tweets over the weekend, reiterating the mini Mike Bloomberg and all of that stuff over the weekend, even talking about that he should focus his attention on New York City. But we would be remiss if we said Mike Bloomberg's not the current mayor here of New York City. So there is only so many things that Mike Bloomberg can do.
Yeah, I do want to mention before we move on, Baker. So these new polls over the weekend, the New York Times Siena poll among them, they're interesting because they are showing that the law and order messaging that Trump has been going so hard on, it's not really breaking through in states where you'd think that it would, such as Wisconsin or Minnesota. I think that was my takeaway from there. Basically the way you have to look at this is every day that a poll shows that Biden is maintaining a lead in a given swing state is a good day for him, right? We're now in crunch time. Like you said, we're 50 days out. The president needs to start staging a comeback if he's going to win this election. I mean, President Trump is on pace to lose the election right now. There's not that much time left.
It would be the third incumbent ever to lose re-election, by the way, if he did.
Only the third, really?
I think would be the third to ever lose re-election. Yes.
Wow. But we're in crunch time now. So this is, as long as Biden can maintain this lead, he's in good shape. And, there's a lot of arguments like, well, he's not going on TV enough. He's not doing enough media. And he probably should be answering more questions from the media. But I think their argument is, the Biden camp argument is like, let's do the least amount possible.
And you just let Trump sabotage himself at this particular point.
I think that's the argument, right?
All right, let's talk about this terrible, awful story that happened in Los Angeles over the weekend, Carlo. A massive manhunt underway and a $100,000 reward has been offered in the hunt for a gunman who walked up and shot two LAPD officers in their patrol car on Saturday night. Both sheriff's deputies are in the hospital but are expected to survive their injuries. Witnesses reported a small group of demonstrators gathering at the hospital, chanting anti-police slogans and at one point attempting to get inside. And the sad part on almost all of this, Carlo, is there's a videotape of it happening that was circulating online over the weekend as well.
Yeah, that surveillance video just shows this was a straight up ambush. It's not like there was any sort of confrontation between these officers and this person. He just walked up and shot them through the window. I mean, could you be more of a POS than chanting, anti-police slogans outside of a hospital where two cops are fighting for their lives? I don't understand. Do people think that makes you look good or righteous in the cause? It's so gross to me. But meanwhile, President Trump and Joe Biden have both condemned this attack. Again, it's a political season, so everything and anything will be politicized from both sides. So just keep an eye on that. But it is good news, at least, that these officers look like they will make it.
All right, Carlo, let's talk about the drama that is happening right now with TikTok. The clock has been running out on President Trump's deadline to force his sale of TikTok's U.S. operations. The Chinese-owned company has reportedly chosen Oracle to be its, quote, American tech partner, rejecting an acquisition from Microsoft on Sunday. Now, Oracle, among the more Trump-friendly of the big tech companies out there, and the White House, of course, has to sign off on any deal. But new developments early this morning, Carlo, according to Chinese state television, ByteDance plans, and the Chinese government, but ByteDance plans to reject Oracle's offer this morning as well. So if that's the case, then there would be no U.S. buyers potentially to get TikTok whatsoever, which then means potentially President Trump might ban the app from even being used here in the United States. So just so many different layers of complexities to this.
Yeah. So this is developing. I think that regardless of what has just happened, I think first of all, Chinese state TV like that, they're gonna. They're just don't believe anything you hear from them necessarily. Like they're going to try and make it sound like, they're not being forced. Their hand isn't being forced here. I think what the idea is that Oracle would come in not really as a parent company, but more of like this cloud services provider. So they would basically host all of the TikTok U.S. algorithms and the data on U.S. servers. I think that's sort of the idea. Yes. I don't know if they would have like more of a direct impact on the app itself. No. And again, not to bring everything back to the president here, but I don't know. Perhaps it's a coincidence that Larry Ellison, who is Oracle's billionaire founder and CEO, is really the only Trump-supporting CEO that I can think of a major Silicon Valley company, and he is now sort of being given this huge asset on a silver platter. I don't know.
I mean, besides Peter Thiel, you're 100% right. Larry
But
Ellison.
Is Teal a CEO?
I don't know if he's a CEO because, yes, Palantir, his other company, is obviously run by somebody else. But yeah, Peter Thiel obviously pulls a lot of strings for that company. But you're absolutely right. Larry Ellison and Oracle have done the delicate dance of really being close with President Trump while not upsetting him whatsoever. And I'm glad you brought up the fact that Oracle would basically be housing its cloud-based infrastructure because, Carlo, that originally was what Microsoft was planning to do. Then all of a sudden it got to would Microsoft be able to get TikTok's algorithm, which is essentially the reason why you would want to get TikTok to begin with? Then the Chinese government essentially said, no, there's going to be a rule in place that says you can't sell your algorithm to a foreign company without the expressed approval of the Chinese government. That then binded the hands of Microsoft. So then comes in Oracle, who essentially is offering to do the exact same thing as Microsoft was planning to do, and now they're planning to get TikTok, unless, of course, the Chinese government doesn't make this deal happen.
Yeah, my guess is today this will shake out and we'll have a better sense. But it looks like it's Oracle or bust.
Yeah, that's true. All right, let's go. To a different story, Carlo. Never before has one weekend packed in so much pro sports. It was insane what was happening this weekend. Yeah. We went so many weekends without any sports, and we went this last weekend where every 5 minutes there was an amazing game happening.
Couldn't even keep up.
Yeah, so let's start off with NFL Week 1. Tom Brady scored a QB sneak touchdown in his game as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, his very first one, before losing by double digits, while his replacement in New England, Cam Newton, rushed for 2 touchdowns to lead the Patriots to a big win. Meanwhile, college football fans got 19 games to choose from, too. In the NBA playoffs, the Lakers and the Celtics advanced to the conference finals. My Denver Nuggets, a big surprise Game 6 win over the Clippers. Nice. So now a Game 7 semifinals happening for the Nuggets and the Clippers on Tuesday. And let's not forget about Naomi Osaka, her amazing performance at the U.S. Open as well.
Yeah, I mean, well, so first of all, back to Brady for a second. This was it was pretty weird for a lot of people to see Tom Brady wearing something other than a Pats jersey for the first time in 20 years.
So weird.
But yeah, it
was like when Brett Favre. It was like for me when Brett Favre went to like the Jets. You're like, what?
Yeah. I don't ever understand when these guys, and again, I'm like not a huge football fan, so you shouldn't really take anything I say with more than a grain of salt. But I just like, if you're somebody who is just like such an icon of a sport, like you should just retire with that team. Like I never understand these guys that do like Jordan was the same way.
They can't give it up. I know. They've done this their whole lives, and it's hard for them to give it up. It would be like me and you not being able to do a podcast every single day. It would be so difficult.
The difference is Cheddar doesn't have our jerseys retired from hanging from the rafters.
Yes.
At least not
They
yet.
just have my Flora print shirts retired somewhere.
Yes. But meanwhile, that wasn't all. The NHL playoffs, Dallas and Tampa Bay are now both one win away from reaching the Stanley Cup Finals. We don't talk a lot about hockey on the podcast, which is probably my fault because I'm just not a big hockey fan. But we should mention, because along with the NBA, the NHL is having one of the more successful bubble experiments this year. So we don't want to leave them out. And like you said, the U.S. Open also coming to an end. Naomi Osaka winning the women's single. And Dominic, how do you say this name? Dominic Thiem?
Yeah, that's how I think they've been pronouncing it, yeah.
Well, anyway, he's from Austria. He captured his first Grand Slam title in the men's singles yesterday in a wild comeback out there in Queens.
Yeah, the U.S. Open has been so good, and Osaka
How about Naomi Osaka?
She was incredible on Saturday night. That was actually besides the Nuggets game this weekend, that was one of the matches I did watch this weekend on my phone while I was upstate this weekend, and did not disappoint. Carlo, finally...
Second Open for Osaka, third Grand Slam title, and she's what, 20?
Yeah. Incredibly decorated, and also the fact that she played the U.S. Open with different masks supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. She just really came into the U.S. Open and made an incredibly huge splash over the course of the tournament.
Carlo, 22. Years old, sorry.
23. Is that how old did you say she is?
22.
Oh, 22. Even more impressive. Yeah. Jeez. Yeah. All right, finally, Carlo, the Pennsylvania candy company that makes those Peeps, those marshmallow delicious things, says they're not going to produce those marshmallow chicks for Halloween, Christmas, or Valentine's Day. They're doing this that way they can focus on Easter of 2021. Like everything else, the Peep supply chain was impacted by this pandemic. My question to you, Carlo, have you ever put a Peep in a microwave for just like maybe 5 to 10 seconds?
Is that good?
Oh, I love it because it kind of like expands a little bit, gets a little crunchy. I mean, I haven't done it since I was a kid, but I used to do that all the time on Easter when my mom would give me like a pack of Peeps, put it in the microwave 5 to 10 seconds, let it expand, get a little crunchy on the outside. It was delicious.
Ooh, a baker life hack. I love it. I have to say though, when this story was coming across yesterday, and I was just like, who is buying Peeps for anything other than Easter?
I know,
I mean, like,
right? So true.
if I went trick or treating and somebody gave me Peeps, I would
Oh.
be there would be hell to pay.
Oh, that's how I felt growing up. And if I went to somebody's house and they were giving like old, Tootsie Rolls, we're like, what are you doing on Halloween? I'd be like, what are you doing? Give me at least, like the mini Kit Kats or something.
I'd take an apple over I'd take Peeps on it.
Yes, I take
But
the
again,
apple with the razor blade. Yes.
but it just shows you how much the the pandemic has just even the candy supply
Yes.
is all messed up.
Not
right?
even the
Meanwhile,
Peep supply works.
there's still things that I'm unable to get at the at the store. Like there's certain cleaners that my wife and I use that like cleaning supplies still can't find them.
Still back
There's
ordered?
yeah, everything is still messed up. It's wild.
More importantly, how's your toilet paper and paper towels stockpile?
The paper, yeah, the paper product situation is pretty solid, at least in Brooklyn. There's no issue there anymore.
Do you know what's funny? We do this show on Between Bells where we talk about home buying, and it's really interesting, Carlo. A lot of home buyers now, the hot thing now is extra storage in your house specifically for toilet paper and paper towels. That is the hot new item people are wanting in a lot of houses now.
Would be nice to have extra storage for anything, but
Yes.
but yeah, I guess that makes sense, right? All right, let's get out of here, guys. It is Monday, September 14th. That is what you need to know, Baker. You're my friend, a pleasure, a mensch. I love you. But we will have Wags back tomorrow, I promise. And we'll see you then. Thanks, everyone.